Before teachings in Buddhism are taught, Buddhism emphasizes the need to have a calm mind before any learning is to take place. This means a person is at a point in life where one no longer dedicates mental energy towards troubles of personal life or problems of one's surroundings. It could be thought of as a holistic way of learning where one's very way of being changes and grows as a result of learning. One becomes immersed in the learning process and one evolves from the very core as learning takes place. This is where Buddhism considers one to have finally learned something. The teachings go to the core of a person and to a way of being. In terms of what is taught in the Shamatha teachings, it is a teaching of a way of being, and it is the foundation of all wisdom that is possible for one to learn. Here, Shamatha is emphasized as a need and a prerequisite which makes the mind ready for learning. Once some degree of readiness is established, appropriate teachings are given for the appropriate level of readiness one finds oneself. The teaching's depths are understood better and better as time progresses and the practice of Shamatha enhances. As one progresses in Shamatha, one gains more clarity of the teachings and the teachings become solidified even further as time passes. Shamatha is very important in the Buddhist framework of progressing on the spiritual path. Buddhism requires one to have suitable and conducive circumstances to practice shamatha. If these suitable circumstances are not established, progress may be slowed and lacking in quality. The sources of these deficiencies may not be problems in the meditation practice, but circumstances prior to the practice of meditation getting in the way, for which there is nothing to do while in meditation but to take care of the outside circumstances first. So with this thinking, Buddhism requires the person to establish the 6 essential causes before engaging in samatha. The first of the 6 is the requirement of dwelling in a favorable environment. This requires one to have a peaceful living environment, most importantly. A lot of human commotion in the daytime is discouraged, and during the night it is considered important to not have a lot of noises around. The necessities of life, such as food, water, etc., are important to be accessible without much effort on the part of the practitioner. Also, a good human environment is important, where one's progress is enhanced when one is surrounded by those sharing similar views and practices. This is after one has decided the Buddha Dharma to be the right course of being for oneself, of course. Living in this environment allows a person to leave behind questioning of the path any longer and simply working on treading the path as best as possible. Reducing desire is the second cause. This requires one to set aside pursuits of this life and dedicate oneself to full awakening. Tsongkhapa explained this as not only being satisfied and not having desires to better one's current situation of lodging, clothing, food, etc., but he also emphasized the need to not be fantasizing in the mind. It is important for the person's mind to be in the right place. If the mind is engaged in fantasies, this makes the person only strengthen their desires of worldly concerns will only bring about more activity of the body and speech, which will act as an obstacle in the spiritual pursuit. The third cause is developing contentment. To not be content and not be at peace also leads one to be engaged in more activities of body and speech, which, as mentioned before, also causes one to be distracted and thus serve as an obstacle to the practice. Also, likewise, the fourth cause, rejecting multitude of activities, comes from the same reasoning, and the engagement in many activities serve as a source to potentially upset the mind and serve as distractions. The fifth requires one to maintain a pure moral discipline. Here one is required to not engage in the 10 non-virtuous acts, killing, stealing, etc., the common non-virtuous acts. These acts are considered unwholesome and takes one in the direction of non-virtuous states of minds. And those who have taken moral code vows, the monks, in addition to these, have a higher level of moral code to maintain and would be considered engaging in unwholesome activities if a monk is to break any aspect of the vows, although those same actions may not be considered unwholesome for a lay person. Maintaining moral standards contributes to mental calmness. Negative actions are a result of mental agitation such as anger, desire, jealousy, and keep one from realizing shamatha. The sixth cause is to reject thought of desire for sensual objects. The desire of the 8 worldly concerns are highlighted here. The point is that the desire of the pleasure of this life draws one away from using this life to prepare oneself for one's ultimate aspiration. It only serves to keep one attached to the sensual realm, and so it makes it harder for one to engage in practices to enter the realm of concentration called the dhyanas, which are beyond the sensual realm. As one progresses in Shamatha, one begins to enter these new realms of existence, which are more or less experiencing life with more awareness, and thus experiencing a new level of existence. And thus, with increase of awareness, the wisdom or insight needed to liberate oneself are gained with more efficiency and are gained faster when one's mind is not on objects in the sensual realm. This is the beginning of reversing the wheel of suffering. With these as the foundation to one's practice, one can begin in the practice of Shamatha. Shamatha is a practice, in short, of enhancing one's awareness or concentration. As there is no analysis required in this type of Buddhist meditation, Buddhism encourages one to choose an object of meditation, an appropriate object of focus for each specific individual. It is important for a person to choose an appropriate object of meditation which suits them best. Buddhism has classifications of appropriate objects for specific individuals. They are classified in the 5 psychological types, and the appropriate objects to meditate on for each person's specific psychological type. The purpose here is to eliminate as much as possible the most urgent unwholesome mental states, and also their corresponding activities which are weighing down one's spiritual practice. During this practice, one is engaging in Shamatha and working on concentration at the same time. The first psychological type is the type of mind which is wrapped in attachment. This could be attachment to various objects of attachment in one's life. It could be one's infatuation of a lover, as could be an obvious example in our romance-minded society. The basic quality of having attachment is for one to have a distorted view of the real nature of the object of attachment, and thus becoming attached to it because of the lack of awareness of the real nature of this object. One superimposes all the good qualities onto the object and screens out negative qualities of the object, and thus one creates a distorted image in one's mind. One then yearns for this object based on a distorted view of the object. Being attached in this way serves as an obstacle to progressing in spiritual practice, and it is recognized as being important to eliminate this type of mental disposition so that one is able to be more fully dedicated to the spiritual practice. The attachments are seen as delusions and are sought to be eliminated because they are products of ignorance. They will be sources of suffering for the person in the long run. The antidote for this psychological type are for a practitioner to concentrate on the negative qualities of the object of attachment. The object of meditation here for such a person is the attachment object itself, but while in meditation one is instructed to direct the mind to see the negative qualities of the object. This works to diminish attachment towards the object, and one is finally able to see the object more as it really is. The second psychological type is a person who is predisposed to hatred. Here one aggressively attends to ways one has been harmed, the nature of how one has been harmed, and one constantly reflects on the source of this harm. The result is the mind not being able to let go of these incidences, and therefore making it hard for the person to maintain a peaceful mental stream of mind, which is very important for spiritual practice. The antidote here is to wish for the well-being of all sentient beings, family, friends, neutral people, and foes. This comes from the Buddhist view of dependent origination, where